coffee stragglers and we'll get started. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
And of course, there's leads over here that are busy talking.
That's the
You're always disciplinary problems.
more punishment thing for us.
We're gonna put you in the back row.
All right, so we'll get started. So, start off as an Orthodox, right? So today we start with the death of Yankel.
Uncle? Oh, Yunkel. Yeah.
He doesn't look it, is.
Not uncle, but younger.
Yankel. So, for the, it's Chaim, we're on
Yes,
page
it's
293. But Yechi, which is the last Sidra of Breshit. So we finished a book. So this is, I think, one of the fortunate Sidras where everybody skips most of it because it's the blessing of the tribes. But there's actually some interesting stuff in there. So I thought we'll start reading in the beginning of the Parsha with the death of Yankel. And then eventually get to the blessings, because I think they're worth looking at. Some of them are worth looking at. So,
The death comes before the blessings?
yeah, well, the death of Jacob.
Isn't that the uncle you're talking about?
That's the one who dies.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The blessings came coming up and he's dead.
Yeah, that's right. So
His death might be a blessing for.
But anyway, he gets, yeah, so the order is funny, but okay. So we're page 293, if somebody wants to read.
I'll read if you like.
Okay,
Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that the span of Jacob's life came to 147 years. And when the time approached for Israel to die, he summoned his son Joseph and said to him, "Hey, do me this favor. Place your hand under my thigh as a pledge of your steadfast loyalty. Please do not bury me in Egypt."
well, first of all, let me just point out his name is Jacob and it's Israel.
right.
Does that mean anything?
It means somebody else wrote that, one of those lines.
It could be, yeah.
To me, I think, using his given name Jacob, at the beginning, that's how he started life. And then in later life, he became Israel.
Yeah,
Or we can think that Jacob, the man, died, but Israel, the name and people and idea
right.
doesn't die in the same way.
So the blessings are Israel, right? The person is Jacob, so to speak.
But you can go on further. Somebody pointed out to me, he never actually dies. He's just gathered his people. Or something.
Well.
I know, I mean, it was some phrase,
He
some
died.
phrase that.
Hey, he died.
And some of the Midrash even say he never
It's
died.
not Jewish.
Right.
That was the physical.
All right, and placing hand under the thigh, I guess you get the symbolism, you're swearing by future generations.
I'm sorry?
Placing your hand on my thigh.
Yeah, that's controversial. Under his thigh.
Under his thigh. So it's like the way I was taught, it's the guarantee for future you're swearing on the future of future generations.
Get as close to the genesis of future generations as you can.
Yes, something like
Well,
that.
near where the circumcision is, right? I mean, it's
Also
so
that.
symbolic.
Right. So,
But you guys wouldn't be Jewish
right, but we don't do this anymore.
traditionally.
Okay.
Are we not be Jewish or we're just not the covenant people?
Ask the rabbis.
He knows everything.
If we're uncircumcised, if we're born as Jew, but for whatever reason, the males don't get circumcised, is the male not considered Jewish or just not in covenant?
Well, it's considered uncircumcised, like you've got this mitzvah that's hanging over you. Do it already.
Right.
But yeah, you're still Jewish. Right.
So-
Yeah, but what it's like the people in Russia who were
In
not
where?
in Russia, who
In other words,
consider
you gotta
themselves
do it-
Jewish, but they couldn't be circumcised.
But they're still considered Jewish.
Yeah,
There's just this one mitzvah that they haven't, sort of done. Right.
it's on their to-do list.
With converts, I think it's different. Then you actually have to have the circumcision as part of the whole process.
That's what happened when they came here. These adults, as adults, they suddenly had to have, Brit Milah.
Yeah. Boy, that would discourage immigration,
And I
wouldn't
took
it?
Judy.
All right, so you want to keep going?
I will continue. So please do not bury me in Egypt. When I lie down with my fathers, take me up from Egypt and bury me in their burial place. He replied, I will do as you have spoken. And he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed at the head of the bed.
Okay.
You go to that one. I guess he didn't.
You're
Seems to
reading.
be- There seems to be some doubt in Jacob's mind that he can trust Joseph
Oh, I see.
to take him back to Canaan, to Israel.
Right.
And I mean, you have to consider that he's just reconciled with his son, that he was the son was alienated, and now he's a prince, and Jacob has come down, but he sees that he's again, and this is one of the things that has to be kept in mind. He still has questions about his son's identity. Is he an Hebrew or is he an Egyptian or is he both?
Right. I want to come back
Could
to that.
could we see Jacob wanting to go to being buried back in Canaan as being an oath, a sign that everybody's gonna go back eventually?
Maybe, or maybe that's what he's trying to signal, or maybe he wants to be in the
Well,
family
I think
grave.
He says it's somewhere further on.
Yeah, but I like the idea of his. I want to come back to this identity of Joseph, but here's Joseph. He's an Egyptian. He's been an Egyptian almost all of his adult life. He's the second in command or whatever it is. Is he, at one point, does he stop being a Hebrew and start being an Egyptian?
Was he
Right.
circumcised?
Probably. I think he was old enough when he was
17.
when he was thrown in the pit. So, yeah. But you can be circumcised and convert out, and they don't have to
Oh, yeah.
undo the circumcision. I'm told.
Wait a minute.
Right.
I thought Judaism doesn't believe in converting out. Once you're a Jew, always a Jew, even if you're practicing some other religion.
You have to do something to come back in, don't you?
Yeah,
Donation.
this gets a little bit more
Donation.
complicated. Like, when do you stop being Jewish?
When
How far do you have to go?
when he's elevated to viceroy, to second in command, he has the power, and then he marries an Egyptian woman and has Ephraim and Manasseh, or Manasseh and Ephraim. And we're going to get into that too, but
Yeah, I want to come back and talk about that because there's an issue that comes up here. So, yeah, but I get the point of Jacob, just wondering a little bit about this vizier I'm talking to here in the palace with all the regalia. Is he really one of us anymore? So he does make him like say, you promise that you promise, stick your hand, et cetera, right? So, yeah, there's yeah.
I mean, Judah's speech to Jacob, the incredible speech that turns him around and makes him come out and acknowledge who he is to the brothers.
Back when they meet, yeah.
Back. I mean, that's. I wish we could just go to that speech and spend like 2 hours going through those 18 verses, the most beautiful and incredible verses probably in all of Genesis, next to maybe Abraham's confrontation with God on Sodom.
Right. I mean, I can just imagine with Joseph all of a sudden comes out and says, in I suppose in biblical Hebrew, I'm your brother Jacob, Joseph, and everybody's thinking, right, and I'm Donald Duck,
Right, but Judah makes him see that he still belongs to the family. He makes him understand that he should have loyalty to his father
Right.
and his
Well, let-
brother. And he,
Yeah, let's go on a little bit, because I want to get to the blessings, because then I think a lot of this stuff comes out.
Just
So-
a quick question about verse 31, where it says they bowed down. It's not clear to who or to what they bowed down.
Yeah. He bowed down to the head of the bed.
No, Israel bowed.
Yeah.
It's one person, but he was already in the bed, I thought. That's what I don't understand.
So I don't understand. Yeah, I don't know.
No, the verb
He was
they bowed down is in plural.
Right. V'yishtachavu Yisrael. Huh,
And that's why it's kind of not clear.
I don't know. That's a
Is
good
it
point.
possible he was acknowledging that to Joseph, you're like the next in line?
It could be. And maybe they both bowed and they're in agreement.
Other comments below.
Because
I'm sorry.
he just said, Joseph just says, yes, I swear I will bury you. To me, that kind of is the passing of the,
Passing of the torch, so to speak.
yeah, thank you.
The comments below seem to indicate that although Joseph might have given his father the assurance that he would do it, this extra swearing, this extra bowing is to somehow entice the Egyptians into understanding that this is above and beyond a father and son. It's something that gets done at a higher level, and so that when Joseph wants to command troops to take his father back, they're more willing to accept it, because it's a different sort of ritual than just a father-son promise.
Well, but it's also acknowledging that the father is like equivalent to the pharaoh, and a father is somebody important.
Right.
There is a footnote on page 293. It says bowed at the head of the bed. The ancient patriarch, being an invalid, could only make some bodily gestures, symbolic. And then also a token of gratitude toward Joseph as an expression of thanks and praise to God.
So actually, it's a very moving kind of picture of what goes on between the two of them, and you can imagine the tension or the mistrust or Jacob, not just really sure, right? Okay, can you go on?
Yep.
All right. So beginning of chapter 48. Somebody else want to read? Thank you, by the way. You did a really good job.
I've been reading most of my life.
It shows.
So what?
Okay, what page is it?
Oh, this is 290
That was a comment.
something, 4.
48.
294, yeah.
294, sometime after.
Sometime afterward, Joseph was told, your father is ill. So he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, your son Joseph has come to see you, Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me and said to me, I will make you fertile and numerous, making of you a community of peoples, and I will assign this land to your offspring to come for an everlasting possession. Now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, no less than Reuben and Simeon. But progeny born to you after them shall be yours. They shall be recorded instead of their brothers in their inheritance. I do this because when I was returning from Padan, Rachel died to my sorrow while I was journeying in the land of Canaan, when still some distance short of Ephrath, and I buried her there on the road to Ephrath, now Bethlehem.
Okay, so what do you make of this, I don't know, what'd you say, adopting these 2 sons? When both parents are still alive, as far as we know, right? Well, we know Joseph is alive. What does he mean he's going to adopt them?
I think he acknowledges that they're family.
To have toddlers running around.
Well, they can be grandchildren and part of the family.
Well, he's
I mean, they are
acknowledging, but
grandchildren.
he's acknowledging it instead of saying they're yours, they are also mine.
I think Would it
But
have to?
only those two, but only those two.
But only those two, yeah.
And the fact they were born in Egypt.
I'm
They
sorry,
were born outside the land. They were born in Egypt.
and
But now they're gonna become part of the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph is not mentioned as one of the in the 12 tribes, but Manasseh and Ephraim are. So they're being adopted. Jacob is trying to make sure that Joseph understands that he's taking them as Israelites, as Hebrews, that even though Joseph may still have some lingering confusion about whether he's a Jew or an Egyptian, Jacob's going to make sure that his grandsons know who they are.
well, some of his grandsons.
It
Two of
says
his
here, intra-family adoptions are well attested in the ancient Near East.
You know, my problem isn't that he wants to adopt them. My problem is the parents are still alive, right? And it's only those two. It's not their siblings. They
How
may.
old are they? How old are they? This is
It's a good question.
he
Well,
said that they lived, were they born, for example, when Jacob was in 17 years in the land of Egypt. So
Right.
were they born already or weren't they? And what are the
Probably were.
prospects of other children?
Yeah. And are these in fact, I don't say Hebrews? Their mother is an Egyptian.
Yeah.
Were they circumcised?
Were they circumcised? Did they convert? We're not told. All we're told is all of a sudden Jacob takes them up. Those two, and keep in mind whether they're part of the 12 tribes or not, it's gonna come up in 20 minutes. I think there's a question about where they fit into the whole scheme of things. But this whole adoption thing, I think is a little bit interesting. Like, what's he doing and why is he doing this?
Well, isn't there?
Is he telling Joseph, I still don't trust you, so I'm taking your kids?
Well, in
I
our
think
world,
maybe it's also a way of telling the other sons, okay, Joseph is not the one who really, he's not really part of us, but let's take his kids and let's do something with them. Why should we throw out the whole family? We are, after all, grateful to them for what they've done to us.
Yes.
Okay.
we
I'll
also
just
see.
throw out there that among other things, it seems like he's giving the double portion to the first son of Rachel instead of to Reuben.
Right. Right. So we can ask how Reuven thinks about this. I mean, the dynamics of this particular thing is really interesting on what's going on. And when we look at the blessings of the sons, near the end of the chapter, we want to come back to this.
Yeah, because they get when he compares them to Reuven and Shimon, that tells you a lot because he doesn't think very well of Reuven and Shimon for many
And Levi.
I don't know why.
But also it's very-
and Levi, right?
And this constant shifting between Israel and Yaakov, his name is constantly being shifted.
Yeah.
Well, we see some other things too. I mean, he starts out referencing the Manasseh, Ephraim, later Ephraim and Manasseh, so there's probably something being told to us there. But also, at the end of the last part of the story, it was Judah who was the big guy. Judah, right? And now we're back to Reuben, which, so we're either the narrative shifting, the authors are shifting, whatever it may be, but we're seeing that there's a different focus from the legal patriarchal side of things as expressed through Joseph and Jacob now versus the day-to-day how men behave and family allegiance and brother allegiance.
Right. There's politics going on here. So, yeah.
Peter, are you familiar with the term redcon?
No.
So in popular culture, in a mythology, Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, whatever it might be, if in later times, in a more current modern version, a character does something or is created or appears, but it would make no sense because that character did not appear previously in the first trilogy, in the first chapter, a mythology, a story is created to help explain, that person was stuck in the closet because the bandits had put him there. That's why he did not appear in book number 1. But in book number 10, he is there and plays an important role.
Okay.
It's called a retcon. So I'm curious to know.
It's like a
if-
Chekhov's gun in reverse. Yeah.
Exactly.
What is it called?
A retcon.
Retroactive.
So how
what-
could we see this perhaps? If we're talking about the Torah being put together in different time periods, et cetera, that kind of perspective, could we say that this little passage is a way to retcon how Ephraim and Manasseh became part of the tribes of Israel, why Ephraim is more important than Manasseh later on historically, because blah, blah, blah. So now we have this little passage written that sort of explains that
I think
situation.
that's exactly what's going on. And when we get to the blessings, I want to talk about that again. But yeah, I think there's later politics being written into here, I think,
Okay,
about what did Jacob do? What did Joseph do? How did these tribes relate to each other? Yeah, so we'll get to there.
okay.
So, but yeah, it's a good point. Yes.
He's pretty alert for an old man dying. That's a.
Maybe we'll get to it. Okay, so so he wants to go back and, so we're 8. Somebody want to read or you want to continue reading? Verse 8 on 295.
Sure. Noticing Joseph's sons, Israel asked, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here. Bring them up to me," he said, "that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were dim with age. He could not see.
Although we did notice there were 2 kids, because you just said, who are those blobs over there, right?
So Joseph brought
Cataract.
them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see you again, and here God has let me see your children as well." Joseph then removed them from his knees and bowed low with his face to the ground. Joseph took the 2 of them, Ephraim with his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand to Israel's right, and brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, thus crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph, saying, "The God in whose ways my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd from my birth to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the lads. In them may my name be recalled, in the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they be teeming multitudes upon the earth."
Yeah, let's stop here. So you know what happens next. So Joseph says, wait a minute, you've crossed your hands, you've got the wrong one on the right. And he says, no, even though Manasseh is the firstborn, Ephraim gets the firstborn
He
blessing.
suddenly is able to see which one is which.
Right, his eyes got better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a common theme. We've seen it with, so there's nothing unusual here. But I did kind of want to point this out that first of all of a sudden they become part of the 12 tribes, we think, right? How many tribes were they up to that point?
I thought they were still 12.
There were
I
12.
guess
So now we have 14.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it takes out Levi
And,
Joseph.
and Joseph.
right. Ephraim and Manasseh, just if you want to talk about the political kind of background here, when we get to the divided kingdom, right, of Israel in the north and Judah in the south, the 2 most prominent tribes in the north are what?
One did right.
One is Ephraim.
Is the other one? The other one is Manasseh, is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Those are in terms of land, I don't know about population, but in terms of land, Ephraim and Manasseh were the 2 big northern tribes. So, how How did that happen? Well, back when Jacob was making the blessing, he brought, that's your point, right? He adopted them and they became not only tribes, but major tribes. And later on in the prophets, often when they're talking about, when southern prophets are talking about the north, they call it Ephraim. Sometimes they call it Manasseh, but usually they call it Ephraim.
Well, why is it that, why do you think it is that Jacob favors Ephraim over Manasseh, other than that he's the younger one? But there's a reason, and and in the commentaries, it has to do with their names, the meaning of their names, because Manasseh, the firstborn, means to Joseph, he says, he names him Manasseh because it means a forgetting. It allows me to forget about my family and my troubles back home. Whereas Ephraim has to do with celebration and productivity, even though at that point Joseph acknowledges that he's, he's not really happy with his life in Egypt.
I think you're making too much out of it. I think he's just holding on to tradition. Isaac was the younger, Jacob was the younger, Joseph was from this younger wife. Manasseh Ephraim is also the younger. It's just traditional to do the younger.
Yeah, it just
Yes,
falls.
but when Jacob is to Jacob, though, he understands that the name Manasseh represented Joseph's effort to forget, to blot out his family.
I guess.
His family.
I'm not buying it.
Well, the moment that Joseph goes to bless, he immediately invokes the name of God, the God who, this way, that way. So perhaps we're supposed to see in that Jacob's hand is being guided again by God, and we're intervening in that way.
Right.
Well, actually, you want to talk about what he says there. The first two verses say God, and then all of a sudden in the third verse, it's angel. So who's doing the blessing? Who's he calling
He had
on?
that fight, didn't he?
Right.
Other thoughts? Should we go to the blessings?
Yeah.
So this is.
I thought that's where you would start.
Yeah. So this was all prelude. Now we're, so chapter 49, we're on page 298. Somebody want to read?
I'll go.
Okay.
And Jacob called his sons and said, come together that I may tell you what is to befall you in days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob, hearken to Israel your father.
There's a Jacob Israel thing again, right? Your
Reuben,
biological father is Jacob, but your spiritual parent is Israel, something like that.
Something like that. The mailman.
It's another one of them couplets.
Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and first fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank and exceeding in honor. Unstable as water, you shall excel no longer. For when you mounted his father's bed, you brought disgrace. My couch he mounted.
Okay. So here's the first form.
Pretty alert. He's pretty alert for an old man dying.
Yes. And he still remembers, there is that little passage in, I think it's chapter 35, where Reuben goes to bed with Bilhah.
Yeah.
So he's still angry about that, right?
Yeah.
Still remembering that. And
No, that's okay. That's okay. But the fact that he does remember every bad thing that the kids did,
right.
he has not forgotten.
He is not. And I'm also thinking, here you are, he's dying, he's passing on his legacy, right? We've had all this discussion. So the oldest son comes up and the first thing he does is tear him down.
Yeah.
what does that feel? What's Reuben supposed to do now? Like he's been humiliated in front of everybody. He's been not blessed so much, but cursed, right?
Heartbroken.
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you do that to your kid?
Well, we do it today. We leave them out of wills.
You're
Yeah.
saying they weren't the best parents, our patriarchs, and I find that so hard to believe.
When he mounts his father,
299. I mean,
when he tries to mount Bill Haas' bed, right? And that's like the ultimate rebellion. Politically, it means that he wants to replace his father.
Mhm.
So that's pretty serious stuff.
But it's Billa. It's not Leia. Billa is still a maidservant.
Not Leia or
Well,
Rachel, right?
wouldn't do his own.
Oh, you know,
I mean,
But still, I mean, I think this is to start off the blessing. I'm dying. You guys have to carry forward this Hebrew tradition. I don't know if we can call it Jewish yet. I'm not.
No, I don't.
Oh, well, there you go. But to start off the blessings this way,
well, if he was going to eliminate Reuben without a good cause, after the fact, I think there'd be a lot of controversy. So if he's eliminating him, which is unheard of, the firstborn, he's really got to come up with something major. And he sure seemed to have. Right?
But we say today, for example, that if you are going to leave somebody out of your will, explain it. And in fact, they tell you to make a video of it to make sure they know that you said it when you were conscious and
Oh, it's
aware of what you were
really-
saying.
yeah,
And that's
but at
what he's
the-
doing here.
But at the end of the day, was Reuben really left out?
No.
No.
She's still named.
Right? He's still one of the 12 tribes.
Right, and look at Levi, like you said. Levi becomes the head of the priests, and he was scorned.
Right. Let's go to that because that's the next one coming up, and I have some comments to say to that as well.
Okay.
So,
Also, since he was the firstborn, he may be assuming he will be the leader.
of course, he was assuming.
And Jacob realized that he doesn't have, because of things he's done in the past, he should not be. So by putting him down, maybe I'm not saying he has prophecy in this sense, but he's telling him, he's bringing him down a few notches, so he won't try to be in charge. Because if you put down that much, all of a sudden, his confidence, everything went down, because he probably realizes this is not the person to lead.
And Jacob's also saying, traditional excellence in rank, exceeding in honor, those are things that the other world value. We value the moral and the
Something else.
ethical, and you failed there.
Yeah.
So setting the goals for the Jews, for the Hebrews.
Okay.
Israelites.
All right, verse
Canaanites.
5.
Simeon and Levi are a pair. The weapons are tools of lawlessness. Let not my person be included in their council. Let not my being be counted in their assembly. For when angry, they slay men, and when pleased, they maim oxen. Cursed be their anger so fierce, and their wrath so relentless. I will divide them in Jacob, scatter them in Israel.
Okay. Thoughts?
Were they the ones who went to
Shem?
Shem?
Yes, that's
I
why.
think that's what the
this is all
reference is.
about.
Then what
They
does
went to
Levi?
what?
Shem.
Shem.
Yeah.
When Dina was raped.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Dina.
But then what does Levi do to all of a sudden become the priest? He's cursing them,
So wait, so,
get redeemed.
right. So I can understand if we look later, the curses of Reuben and Shimon and even Levi, because we know later on that we talk about the 10 lost tribes, but that's later Christian mythology. That's not how it works. The south was dominated by Judah, but it included Reuben and Shimon as well. They were part of the southern tribes in the south, but it was really Judah that dominated the south. But those other two tribes were there, but they're submerged. Right? If you
It's
look,
also interesting is he never told Jacob he's a lousy father. He never said anything to the kids before this.
Oh, you don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows.
But if you look at the list of the tribes, Reuben and Simon are not in the list of, a map where the different tribes are located. Reuben and Shimon are not there.
Sure.
Yeah. Menashe is,
Yeah.
Ephraim certainly is.
Simeon.
Oh, is he there?
Shimon's down.
Benjamin, Ephraim,
And
yeah,
the
no,
north and
Shimon is
south.
here.
And
In the
then-
back of the book,
Oh, Reuben was
the
on
back
the,
of the book, they have,
Something, they were both
Simeon.
marginalized.
We're there, thank you.
They were both
Yeah.
marginalized.
I always think of the South as being Benjamin and
oh,
Judah.
and Reuben's here too.
Yeah, but he's again across the river. He's a little bit, he's more,
Well, so is half of Menashe.
yeah, half of Menashe.
Up there.
I think the point you're
Maybe-
making is the point of the political point of what does it look like by the time people are reading this later on during the United Kingdom and probably in the divided kingdoms. So part of it is, it kind of explains that. I mean, scattered in Israel, obviously Levi is scattered all over the place and doesn't technically have a portion of land.
Correct.
So another
But-
way,
but
if
Levi
you
has
want
an
to read
honor.
into it, you can read into it that it's sublimating his violent nature, if you will, into a higher cause. And now he's slaughtering the sacrifices instead of slaughtering people.
Right.
But he has actually, I consider that an honor for Levi.
Well, as Ron points out, isn't this actually what happens? Levi starts maiming oxen on the altar.
Interesting.
Get it?
He went fast maiming them.
It's the best of times, right?
So I mean, I think
But
the
the fact that this blessing is for both Shimon and Levi, why does it seem like Levi is the only one that reacts to this and actually
Right.
does what it says, and Shimon just disappears?
So Reuben, you're kind of a cad, what you did with Bilhah and all that, you're gonna just kind of get scattered and sort of disappear. Shimon, you're too violent, you're gonna disappear. Levi, you're too violent, but I'm gonna make you the priests.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
What's going on here?
I've had a problem.
Well, since the violence, it's their way of, by killing the animals, it's their way of getting out there. Okay?
Well, right, but then
Oh.
Shimon should have as the older.
That's what I said, Shimon should have it too then.
Yeah,
They would be future,
Butcher.
no, I mean.
okay, but what I want to point out here also is that the Levi is still one of the 12 tribes. Right? Okay.
Yes.
So let's go, so now we come to Judah.
Okay.
It is generally held by scholars, which means it may not be true, but it's generally held, if you have the documentary hypothesis and all that, this is a J document. J document is southern, right? So we would expect emphasis on the southern tribes and less emphasis on the northern tribes, right? It's like the North and the South here in the Civil War. Is it the Civil War or the War of Northern Invasion? Okay, so let's see what happens with Judah.
You, O Judah, your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the nape of your foes. Your father's sons shall bow low to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. O pray, my son, have you grown? He crouches, lies down like a lion, like the king of beasts, who dare rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's strap from between his feet, so that tribute shall come to him and the homage of people of his.
Yeah, this is royal language, and Judah is the progenitor of David. And David is the hair binger of Moshe.
Right, so, I mean, Judah is clearly being raised up here. We're not finished yet.
And he's replacing Joseph. Because your father's son shall bow down to you, and that was the dream Joseph had, and now guess what? He's being told.
Well, let's keep going.
No more.
Right.
He tethers his ass to a vine He casts his fowl to a choice vine. He washes his garment in wine, his robe in blood of grape. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk.
Okay, so I think the point of washing his garments in grape juice.
Sounds like blood to
They
me.
become purple and that's a sort of royal color.
yeah.
I think that's what's going on here. So,
Isn't that also Joseph's blood? They were gonna bring the coat back in the blood. And
oh, yeah, this. So Judah really gets raised up here, which if you think of this as the J document, that would kind of explain that. Right?
Yeah. And the Yehudi, Judah, Yehudim, Jews.
Because we come from, Judaism comes from the south. The north is conquered in 722, I remember it well, 722 BCE.
That's right.
And basically disappears except for the Samaritans. But the tradition that we have really comes from the south. It comes from Jerusalem, Benjamin, and Judah, and the kingdom of Judah. And in Greco-Roman times, people from Judah were called, it was Judea, and they were Judaioi, which is where we get Jewish. Right? So, or from Judah. Right? That's our heritage, not the northern. We don't have the northern heritage. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Why were they, my history of the tribes in that period is low, so maybe for others too. So what, you just give us a quick 1 minute summary of what happened up there, why they weren't strong enough to repel the invaders.
Up there, the northerners?
Yeah.
So what happened in the north, first of all, it's not the 10 lost tribes, there are probably only 9 or 8 of them that are in the north. They were, the southern tribes were in the northern Negev and so forth, so very sparse, very, there was not a lot of trade back and forth, it was not in any kind of crossroads. In the north, it was much more expansive, much more fertile, much more different people living there. There were Canaanites, there were Hittites, there are Arameans wandering through. There are all kinds of people going back and forth because that's the trade routes into Egypt. So the north was much more multicultural and people. Yeah. And they seem, from the southern point of view, they were much more assimilated into the common culture of the Middle East. When the Assyrians came, they would have come from the north because that's how you get there. You come up the Euphrates and then you come down the coastal road. So the first kingdom they would have come to was the northern kingdom, right? And at sometimes they and then the Babylonians got as far as Jerusalem, but never were able to take Jerusalem because it was too far away. The supply lines were too stretched, whatever. But the north was much more assimilated, much more multicultural, much more scattered. And on the way to Egypt in the way the south wasn't. And that's probably what happened.
Right.
That
helps. Thank you.
That's exactly right. And then also remember that, they were assimilated, they were conquered by the Assyrians, and they assimilated, but Judah was conquered too by the Babylonians in 586, but they returned. They returned.
They kept the Judeans in the south, which included the remnants of Shimon and Reuben, and maybe Levi.
And Benjamin.
And Benjamin, they held on to an identity and came back, which never happened in the north.
Well, in the north, the Assyrians dispersed everybody.
Right.
In the south, when the
And
Babylonians
planted
came,
other people there.
right, in the south, when the Babylonians came, they only took the elite.
Right. And so they took the royal family, the priests, some of the machers, and
The yeshivas.
the yeshiva heads. And those are the groups that came back. And when they came back, if you read the book of Ezra, there's a really interesting thing, because Ezra says, stop marrying local women. Well, who are the local women? They're Judean women, but they've already started to assimilate. So he really wants the immigrant community that has maintained the tradition, the royal family, the priests, to hold on to that. That's a different Torah portion. But anyway, that's what happens. So when this is written, which is probably in the Davidic kingdom somewhere down the line, when they're trying to put together their history, right? They're downplaying the north and upplaying the south. South, i.e. Judah. Right? All right, should we look at a couple of the others real quick? Somebody else want to read? We're at verse 13.
Zebulun shall dwell by the seashore, he shall be a haven for ships, and his flank shall rest on Sidon.
Yeah, Sidon is the northern port. It's now in Lebanon. Okay, Zebulun, yeah, you're gonna live by the sea, fine, you'll have ships. Next.
Issachar is a strong-boned ass crouching among the sheepfolds. When he saw how good was security and how pleasant was the country, he bent his shoulder to the burden and became a toiling serf.
Probably the political issue here is he really was an ass. He got really comfortable and he kind of gave way to the conquering powers. Isn't that what it sort of sounds like? He kind of went for the good life. Right? Saw how good was security, how pleasant was the country. He bent his soldier to the burden and became a slave. He became part of the conquered and didn't put up a fight. Okay?
Dan shall govern his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the road, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider is thrown backward.
Wait a minute.
And then
He is blessing them, or cursing them, how you want to look at it, but yet he is projecting.
right. So what we're reading is from later on, what happened to the tribes, we're projecting that back into the blessings.
Exactly, it's written backward. Torah was written backward.
Right,
That was like
so
a
this is a later version of the Eve story, probably.
Right.
Yeah,
What happened to what do we know at this point has happened to the tribes? Right, and then you're putting it into Jacob's mouth, so to speak, right? All right, let's go on.
Oh, we gotta get to those.
Dan was in the north, so he was like on the border. So here it's here saying you'll be like the shield of you'll be the border guards, kind of.
Right. So what happened with Dan historically is he started by the sea near Tel Aviv. If you've ever been to Tel Aviv, you know, the bus line is called Dan. This is the Dan region. Later on, he migrates north and he's way up in the in the north of Upper Galilee.
Tell Dan.
Till done, yeah. Okay, let's go.
I wait for your deliverance, O Lord. Okay. God shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at their heels.
Okay.
Asher's bread shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainty.
These are all plays on words. Dan will be a Dayan, right? He will judge. God, dude is a Italian, right? Asher can be riches, right? So, okay.
Naphtali is a hind let loose, which yields lowly fawns.
Now, Joseph.
Okay, now we get to the,
important.
yeah, okay.
Joseph is a wild ass by a spring, wild coats on a hillside. Archers bitterly assailed him. They shot at him and harried him, yet his bow stayed taut and his arms were made firm by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. There, the shepherd, the rock of Israel, the God of your father who helps you, and Shaddai who blesses you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that couches below, blessings of the breast and womb, the blessings of your father, surpass the blessing of my ancestors to the utmost bounds of the eternal hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the elect of his brothers.
Okay.
That's a pretty good blessing.
Oh, yeah.
That comes out pretty good because in the end, you know, the whole narrative, the whole rationale of forgiveness, teshuva, you know, that even though Judah becomes the leader, we have to accept, especially coming at the end of Genesis, the idea of forgiveness, that they're united in the end, that Joseph forgives them and they come together as brothers, right? As tribes, as brothers, because without harmony among the brothers, you can't have a nation. And now they're
Right.
become a nation. If your family is divided with dissent and splits, you can't become a nation.
But my question here is, well, we have Benjamin to do, but Benjamin gets another throwaway line, and it wasn't a very big tribe. So where's Ephraim and Manasseh?
They're not here.
They are Joseph.
Actually, it's in the commentary, it says that Joseph refers to both of them combined.
Right, but I want to point out there, I'm going to adopt your sons, right? They're going to replace you, and then I'm going to bless all of the tribes, and they're not there.
He's not
But, and
blessing
he's
the
also
father, but the
giving the
son.
reward to Joseph. Joseph says they're all gonna bow down to him. And in essence, that's what this blessing is doing.
So again, let me go back to what I asked earlier. If we have 12 tribes, right, the 12 sons, right? And then you add Ephraim and Manasseh. How does that work?
They can't count too well back.
Take away Joseph.
What about Dinah?
Levi.
Dinah wasn't a tribe.
Yeah, Dinah didn't become a tribe. I mean,
Dina's never mentioned again
no.
after the rape.
Joseph
For
and
that
Ephraim
matter,
were
she never
never
thought
equal.
one.
Right.
Can I reverse it? Like when Jacob called the father, never called grandfather. He always say fathers, Abraham and Isaac. Can it be the other way? Then you call, even though it's your grandson, but you still say sons.
Oh, sure.
Can you, in that way, I agree with what Ron said. Then the two sons of Joseph become a
Kind of
tribe of Joseph. It's still the part of the
Right. It's a,
tribe of Joseph.
it's a
Yeah, no, that's a
trinity.
good
It's a
point.
trinity.
Yeah.
And of words, because you know, my son's after me, well, that can be, well,
So can I have a question, follow up on that.
okay.
If when Jacob knew Joseph was died, so there were still 12 tribes. So he
Well, there are
adopted,
12 sons, right.
but Joseph, he thought Joseph died, so that he only had 11 sons left.
Okay.
I thought he adopted the son to replace Joseph, so now Joseph now is back alive, so that adopted son is put aside now? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, no, but that's part of the question. So
Mhm.
how do so we have 14 tribes suddenly? But that can't be true. So what happens?
It's 13, because Joseph is.
Okay.
Why are we hung up on numbers?
Because they are,
Adopt the Big Ten has 18 people and 18 schools in it.
Like the numbers, you don't get to numbers for 2 more books.
so no, what really happens here is there's
We don't
two
know.
counting of tribes. There's the 12 tribes, which include Levi and Joseph. When you look at how the land is divided, Levi drops out because Levi doesn't really get a land inheritance,
So
right?
Joseph,
So you replace Levi and Joseph with Ephraim and Manasseh, and you still end up with 12. And in later times, in the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel up north, the northern kingdom has a Manasseh and it has a Ephraim tribe. But Levi is never in the tribal map of lands because they don't inherit.
And Joseph isn't either?
And Joseph isn't either.
Well, then maybe he figured Joseph had enough from the
he had
Pharaoh.
Egypt.
he got his inheritance.
He inherits Egypt and yeah. So
But you wonder, it's interesting, whatever the Pharaoh would have thought of this. I mean, that the sons of Joseph get this blessing. It may be that he gave the blessing to the children and not to Joseph, so that he would not it would not interfere with his relationship.
But
But he would
Joseph,
not, yeah,
Joseph
but it
gets
would not
more than
interfere with his relationship with the Pharaoh. If he's suddenly going to, I mean, it should be good. He would it would be saying, okay, Joseph, Joseph can say to Pharaoh, you see, you can take over the Jews now. Or
The
the
Hebrew.
Israelites, or whatever we call them then.
Whatever they are, yeah.
Back at 48:12-15. Joseph then removed them from his knees and bowed low. So I'm assuming the boys at this time are very young children.
Really young, yeah.
Right? And then at 15, at the end, when he's talking about the children, he goes, and he blessed Joseph, saying. So Joseph is the surrogate, receives the blessing for the children. So why doesn't that just continue all, we see that continuing on here.
Right.
That's a good
Very
point.
possibly.
And that's 400 years later before
Yeah.
they go on back and they divvy up the land. So who knows what happens in that interim, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a whole other.
But I
Yeah.
just wanted
We
to.
have to wait for some evidence in Egyptian hieroglyphics where they would mention these.
Yeah, but who knows what they're gonna discover, tomorrow, but there's
Yeah,
no mention of these. A little bit of Don, I think he's actually mentioned in a stele. So we know Don actually existed. But otherwise, except for Judah that continues down into Roman times, it's all a bit of speculation.
well, if those two existed, then it's reasonable to assume the others existed and just disappeared.
Yeah. But I really also wanted to point out that we have both the adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh, which is historically accurate, but then with the blessings, they're left out and Joseph is still there. And you can look at it as a political move, you can look at it as different literary styles, timeframes. But I think it's worth pointing out that there's a tension going on here that, doesn't always come up.
It's the Bible,
And therefore.
it's tension.
Tension makes good drama, it makes good literature.
Another way maybe of looking at it is that Ephraim and Manasseh get a kind of a private blessing earlier with just Joseph there, and now with everybody around. They get the blessing of descendants, if you will, because if you bless Joseph, you're blessing both of them with the same blessing because they're descendants of Joseph. I don't know what that might imply, but that seems to be the dynamic that comes to us, even if it comes to us through a political process of which we're no longer fully aware.
Right. Well, I can also imagine when Jacob gathers his 12 sons, what's he gonna say? Oh, not you, Joseph.
Not so fast.
Not so fast, Joseph. You're special.
I've always wondered, why do we bless our sons, Ephraim and Manasseh?
Right. And that's become a tradition, right?
It's been their minor character,
Yeah.
basically. So I'd rather have.
And they're not from the South, but
Like this too, yeah.
there's probably a lot going on here that we were no longer able to, revive or excavate. But there's obviously.
Tell the commentary why Ephraim and Manasseh and not any of their other sons. The other sons were constantly fighting among themselves, and Ephraim and Manasseh never fought among themselves. They were bididut.
Yeah, well, they were also apparently fairly young.
Yeah, so that's why somebody explained to me why we are constantly, when we bless our kids on the holidays or on Friday night, we bless Ephraim and Manasseh and not the other ones.
And it's also the case, we could say Judah, but Ephraim and Manasseh, the tribal areas were quite large. So they were very successful tribes. Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so I thank you very much. Good job.
Yeah,
Thank you.